the quality of feedback you receive is directly proportional to the quality of the question you ask. Take one thing that you're going to do to improve, break it down into the smallest, most ridiculously small unit, and do it every day as a micro habit.
That's Sabina Nawaz. After working at Microsoft for 14 years, she's now an elite executive coach with extensive experience advising C-level executives and teams at Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, nonprofits, and academic institutions around the world. Her new book, You're the Boss, Become the Manager You Want to Be and Others Need, shares what it takes to be that exceptional leader that everyone wants to work for. So you'll learn 1, the perils of getting promoted, why simply asking for feedback isn't enough, and 3, the power of shutting up. And if you'd like to read a summary of the actionable takeaways from this conversation, please pay us a visit at awesomeatyourjob.com and sign up for the free Gold Nugget email newsletter. I'm Pete Mockaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Sabina. Sabina, welcome.
Thanks so much, Pete. Looking forward to this.
Well, I'm so excited. You have studied managers up close and personal, in the trenches with them. Could you start us off by sharing one of the most particularly surprising and fascinating and counterintuitive discoveries you've made about us humans and managing from all your years at work here?
So this book is not about how to become successful. It's how to remain successful. And it's about not all the things that people know, but what do they not know? As you said, counterintuitive stuff. 3 of those. 1, being promoted is the riskiest time in your career. It is not power that corrupts, but pressure that corrupts. Pressure changes, not only stresses you out, but changes your actions. And power then blinds you to the impact of those actions. So the higher you go, the less you know about the impact your actions are having on other people.
Whew, yeah, those are big and those are heavy. Well, I'm excited to dig into all of these promptly, but maybe first, before we do, can you maybe just orient us to what's the big idea or main message behind the book, You're the Boss?
The main message is that pressure and power can be used for good or for harm. It's your choice. And the choice comes from not needing to get a personality transplant or to go on retreats for weeks on end or to study emotional intelligence for the rest of your life, which I would still recommend you do. But by making a choice to use some simple tools and strategies to tackle the combined effect of the diabolical twins of power and pressure. The higher you go, the more important this becomes.
Diabolical twins. Okay, we're sounding the alarm. We're raising the flag. Well, so maybe could you share with us a story of the destructive potential that might be lurking for us that we're not even aware of? So, well, how about you give us a twin tale? Let's hear a tale of surprise destruction and a tale of disaster averted through prudent preparation.
Well, I'll start with my own tale because I tell a lot of tales in the book about a number of my clients, and I am not immune from this. I was a lousy manager at Microsoft, but that wasn't always true. At first, I managed software teams, and most of my people said I was the best boss they ever had. I cared for them. I coached them. Those were great years. And then everything changed. I was running Microsoft's management development. When I was about 8 months pregnant, my boss left the company, so I took on her job responsibilities. And on my first day, as I'm getting ready to get back to work from parental leave, my assistant Lori calls me, frantic. "Where are you? Steve's expecting you in 30 minutes. She reads the memo I'm supposed to discuss with Steve Ballmer, the CEO of Microsoft, as I'm hitting warp speed on my way to the freeway. And that set the tone, Pete, for overflowing inbox, packed calendar, infant at home, no peace, no sleep, no patience. I'm sure this sounds familiar to you and to your listeners. And in a moment, I went from being caring and compassionate to snippy and short. Still 5'3", but now short-tempered. In my rush to meet those deadlines, I had no time for detailed instructions or to repeat myself. And I thought I was being efficient. I also micromanaged. because I was worried that my team or I would look incompetent to these high-level executives. So I'm thinking I'm killing it. I'm being efficient. Look at how much we're getting done for the senior most people in the organization. Until my colleague Joe comes to me. And I take one look at Joe and I know he's about to give me bad news. My shoulders are tightening. And then Joe says, Zach is crying in his office because of what you said. And my gut falls to the floor. Joe has my full attention, not multitasking as usual. And I feel my whole body turn hot from shame. I cannot make eye contact with Joe. I feel so guilty. And I think, how did I get here? How did I go from being caring and compassionate to this? Somebody people apparently fear and really don't like. So I take a drink of water. I walk across the hallway, knock on Zach's door. Will you go for a walk with me? And a minute into the walk, I say, Zach, I'm so sorry. There's no excuse for how I reacted in that meeting. And Zach's eyes brim with tears. And it was in that moment of connection, Pete, I realized this is what I want, to treat people with humanity. But why had I started behaving badly all of a sudden? Why did I have no idea about it, the impact it was having? And why did more people not tell me? Because pressure corrupts. I wasn't a bad person. I was a boss behaving badly. But the worst part is I had no idea, because power then insulates us. So that would be a story of where things did not go well.
I hear you. And Sabina, I hate to bring you into, sounds like a genuinely traumatic experience for you. But for the question mark lingering of curiosity for our listeners, they got to know, what did you say to Zach?
It wasn't just one thing. The problem was it was a whole stream of things, which sounded like a stream of being discounted and insulted to Zach. So he was about to bring up a new idea. And I said, nope. And not only did I say it, I had my hand out there, right almost at his face, going, we don't have time for that. Expletive.
Yeah.
We need to get going. Did you not hear me the first time? We are under a really tight timeline. So my voice is elevated. I'm cursing. My hand is out there in front of his face. And then a little later in the meeting, Zach says, it's okay if you say no to this idea, but can I bring it up? And I said, yes. And he brought up another new idea. And I said, no, right away. No, thank you for thinking through ideas. What made you suggest this right now? None of that. So it was this very abrupt shutting down action that I reacted to. I stopped thinking. I certainly wasn't leading. I wasn't even thinking. And I'm just reacting to my circumstances and the pressure in an inexcusable fashion. And, of course, as I'm sure you're aware, when managers treat employees badly, employees then go back to their office, not just crying, but they play video games, or research shows that they even deliberately sabotage results.
Mm-hmm. Update their LinkedIn, take a look at the opportunities on out there.
Yes. Start a secret group chat about you.
Oh, sure. And thank you for sharing that. What's really intriguing here is that I think we hear stories associated with bosses behaving badly in these ways. And I'm thinking about Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk, when he talks about demon mode, or tales of Steve Jobs, or any number of famous hard-charging executives. And I think what people often tend to assume is like, oh, that's just their personality. That's just their management style. And so you're posing something quite fresh. And it's like, oh no, perhaps we have a whole lot of humanity buried under there. And it's these diabolical twins that is going to work on some of these people. And that's why we see these behaviors manifesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With very rare exceptions. Just like there are no purely good people or purely bad people, we all have good behaviors and bad behaviors in us. There are no purely good bosses or bad bosses. It's our reaction to the circumstances. That doesn't mean it should take us off the hook, but it's not inherent in our personalities.
Understood. Okay. Well, so then By contrast, could you share with us a tale of someone who got the heads up and didn't end up succumbing?
Well, I'll share the tale of somebody who did succumb, then got the heads up,
Okay.
because that's what usually happens. I come in, the feedback I'd gotten about this person was he was terrible to work with. He was a bully. People called him a thug, and much worse, words that I won't use on your show. And we worked together. Now, this guy, Adam, suffered from what many of my clients suffer from, where they think they're successful because of some of these traits, not despite these. So they become innocent saboteurs in their own fate and the fate of their organizations. And that was certainly the case for Adam. He made jokes because he thought that was encouraging people. He used sarcasm to motivate them. Of course, this was all coming across as bullying behavior. Once he recognized that, so this is why I was saying the heads up comes after the fact often, because nobody wants to tell the person in a position of power what they think they don't want to hear.
Yeah, especially when they're behaving in a way that says, I might get my head ripped off for this.
Exactly. Yeah. Who in their right mind is going to do that? Not only get my head ripped off, I might lose my job. So you continue on thinking you're doing just fine, because of course people would give you feedback. You've asked for the feedback, haven't you? Asking for feedback is a waste of time when you have high authority. You've got to deploy some other techniques. And so in Adam's case, when I interviewed a bunch of his coworkers and got this devastating feedback, he did work to turn that around. By the way, I never experienced Adam as a bully or a jerk. I experienced him as a wonderful human being because, of course, we didn't have that power gap in our relationship through which everything gets filtered as more dire, more directed personally at us either. And a year later, I interviewed people again. And then people said, oh, I was dreading having to work for him again. He's so much more respectful. I trust him so much more. He is 1,000% better. So that was a beautiful ending to that story.
Yes, indeed. Okay. So, well, then let's dig into these particular truths that you shared. When we're promoted, it's the riskiest time in our career. Can you expand on that?
Well, of course, it's also a time for celebration when you're promoted. But once the bubblies settle, what you might realize is that the very strengths, the superpowers that have gotten you there are now going to be seen in a very different light. So you can say, for example, as a manager, you can say exactly the same things you said before, but now they're going to take on a harsher light, a louder tone, a more personal note for the next that are craning up. Their views are less charitable. Let me give you a couple of examples. Let's say you are somebody who's assiduous about details. How might you be seen as a manager?
Oh, micromanager.
Yes, a micromanager. Let's say you're really calm under pressure. How might that come across?
You don't care. You're not invested.
Exactly. Ooh, we could keep going back and forth like this. But you get the idea. Strategic becomes manipulative. All of these things can be seen in a whole different light. You need to start to look at your strengths, not from how you see them, but how they're going to be seen from people below. The higher you go, the more that view gets distorted, like a funhouse mirror.
Okay. And what do you recommend we do when we find ourselves in such a spot?
One of the first things you can do is actually inventory your strengths and start writing down ways in which others might describe it and put yourself in those shoes. So one of my direct reports, what would they say? One of my skip levels, what would they say? Somebody who's a junior employee who reports to one of my peers, somebody from the outside who now sees my bigger title. So imagine those sound bites coming at you. And once you see that, you can start to temper things. Somebody I worked with was very, very strategic. And she would take her time speaking up in meetings because she wanted to see where the thread of the conversation was going, who was speaking, who wasn't speaking, what was the tone, what was the vibe of the meeting. And people started thinking that she was very political instead of strategic. They said, oh, she's going to go where the wind is blowing. She wants to see what people above her are saying, and so on. Once she recognized that piece of feedback, she went back to her team to explain to them what she was doing. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. I have a rule. I don't speak up right away and then let me demonstrate to you how that has benefited. For example, I was going to go to this meeting and I went in with this particular point of view, but it wasn't until I heard the third person speaking that I realized this point of view is actually incorrect and it's going to antagonize unintentionally 3 people in that meeting. Wasn't it better not to speak up first in that particular case?
That's handy. Okay. Well, so it sounds like the master keys there are just let's get a sense of what is the perception, and then let's provide some context, some explanation. It's funny, that takes humility on both sides of that there. First, to put yourself in a position where you're willing to hear it. And then secondly, to explain it, because you might say, if you were less humble, I'm the boss. I don't have to explain myself to these folks. And yet it seems that in order to be a great manager, maybe you very well do in fact need to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're a manager who has a yeah, but raging at the moment, saying, yeah, but I don't have time to do it, think about how much time you spend undoing things and that it would take a fraction of the time to do it instead.
All right. And you said simply asking for feedback doesn't work. What's the means by which we get to the truth?
Yes, this is really tough because here you have a boss who has no idea how they're coming across and an employee who's not willing to tell you because of the fear that they have across this power gap. So simply saying, hey, would you give me feedback when you notice something? Employees are going to say, yes, boss. And all they're going to give you is very mild stuff cushioned in praise. So when they tell you everything is fine, what they're actually meaning is, oh, what an ass.
Mm-hmm.
So you have no idea. So first of all, any feedback you get, you might want to add a couple of numbers to it to upgrade the severity of what they're saying. But here's the other thing. You can actually ask more specific questions because the quality of feedback you receive is directly proportional to the quality of the question you ask. If you simply say, how did I do in that presentation or their meeting? People are going to say, you were fantastic. In fact, you should get on the TED stage next week. Because that is not asking for feedback. That is simply asking for reassurance. Instead, if you said, on a scale of 1 to 10, where was I? Let's say they say 8, which you know is going to actually mean a 6 or a 5. Then you can say, what would it take? What's one thing I could do to get to a 9, to get to a +1? What's one thing I did that worked well? What's one thing I can do to get to a +1? Don't ask for too much feedback. If you cut it down to one thing, people are more likely to be able to give you something, and you're more likely to be able to act on it. One other way to ask for feedback is to externalize the ask. So instead of saying, Pete, what's one thing I could do better at on this podcast? I might say, Pete, if you were to channel your most skeptical, your crustiest listener, what would they say about the one thing I could do better? Now, Pete is freed up. It doesn't impact our relationship. In fact, it looks like Pete is working in for me by channeling some of his listeners.
You know, I like that a lot, especially when you're the one asking for the feedback and you suggest the third party voice. That seems like a real powerful combo. And I'm reminded of, well, some interviewers, I think John Stossel in particular, it's just always devil's advocating John Stossel. It's like, well, some might say that this is just a means of bringing costs down and that's necessary. And he even has the voice, which just cracks me up. And so it almost feels a little bit less than courageous when he say, hey, I'm not saying it, but it's some third party, which, but at the same time, as an interviewer, can make your interviewee feel more comfortable. And so
Exactly.
It works, but it's even better to invite them to think about that third party. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, so then in terms of like the asking, is this sort of in person, via survey, email, all of the above? What's the mechanism of collection that you favor?
All of the above is great. I favor direct conversation.
All right.
In person or virtual, of course, these days especially, but somewhere where we are making eye contact, looking at each other and having a live conversation, because you can start to read the cues of the person who's providing you with that feedback as well. And you can tone it down a little bit more. you can make sure you're conveying nonverbal feedback at all times, because they're, of course, hyper aware of any twitch that's going on your face, because they're going to go, oh my gosh, I'm fired. So it allows for more information to be exchanged as you're doing this process. It also shows that you truly care. You're willing to invest live time for it as opposed to a survey.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, now let's dig into a little bit the second thing you dropped there with regard to it's not the power, but the pressure that corrupts. Can you expand on that?
It's just like when I had all that pressure in that job and I started acting out. By corrupting, I mean your behaviors change. Your behaviors change in a way that impact other people adversely. You raise your voice, you have a tone to your voice, you provide harsher criticism than necessary, you cut people off, you interrupt them. All of those things show up when you're under pressure. Now, of course, there's not a single person on the planet who's not under pressure, both at work and outside of work. And I'm sure, Pete, that you have moments where you've been under pressure and you've done something you're not proud of. And gosh, it would be mortifying if that was caught on video and put up on YouTube or TikTok. And so it's no different for bosses. The problem is that the higher we go, the more pressure we have on us. And the more likely we are that one of those is going to subvert our actions and take over.
Okay. So then when we are in that spot where we are feeling the pressure, what are the best practices to not being a jerk?
The first thing is to just shut up.
Okay.
And I have this term called your shut up muscle. And as a manager, it becomes important to buff up your shut up muscle. So there's a shut up exercise, which has many steps, but a couple of those. First of all, be at least the third person to speak. There's no reason for you to jump in the minute somebody asks a question. All you're doing there is training everyone to become over-reliant on you and take the back seat, be lazy or not grow, or feel disempowered on the other side. So be the third or later to speak. That would be one way to exercise your shut up muscle. Another, when you're on video calls, put yourself on mute by default. So when you have that fast twitch desire to speak, you can speak and people are going to go, oh, you're on mute. And by the time you unmute, you can go, oh, it's actually the train is fast. I'm good. It gives your brain a moment to get out of that reactive mode and get back to your senses, to be more strategic and say, do I really need to say this thing? Not really.
Yeah, that's great. The shut up muscle, it's really good because sometimes, in my experience, I am quick to speak because I'm excited. It's like, oh, that thing that you said, also this. And so I can see what you're saying when you compare it to a muscle is it takes some discipline, some restraint, some strength to say, yes, I'm very excited. And I can share that in 90 seconds if it still seems valuable then. And that's okay.
Another key piece. If it still feels valuable then, another tool for the shut up muscle is to take margin notes. That is, you've got your notepad, and then in the margin, write down all of your ideas that you're so excited about that are getting in the way of you being fully present and likely to cause you to interrupt other people. Mm-hmm. If you wait for a while, let's say you have 5 notes in your margin, 3 of those might be suggested by somebody else. That's great. That means that they're taking initiative. They're going to start working harder than you for a change and reduce some of the pressure on you. And the 2 things that haven't been said, maybe only one of them needs to be said. Now you're going to have a lot more impact because you've gotten rid of what I call a communication fault line, which is verbal overkill. Mm-hmm. If you have just one thing to share and that one thing is shared just by you, it's not an idea other people thought about, that's a way you can truly add value in a meeting.
Lovely. And can we hear about the power blinding us?
Well, it's the part about who wants to get the head bitten off. And also with power comes power to take away or give things to other people that matter to them, a raise, a promotion, their very jobs. As a result, people are not going to say things to you that they think will displease you and that don't feel safe. So as a result, you're cushioned by people who are saying yes all the time, cushioned by a lot of praise, A CEO I worked with, it was the day before their CEO ship was going to get announced. And they said, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to become the funniest person in this company. Because your jokes suddenly are funny. Your ideas suddenly are brilliant. So you get blind to what else might be going on.
Mm-hmm. And what shall we do in that scenario?
The end of the book has an assessment of 40 plus questions called 360 Yourself. And it looks at every power gap, every kind of power gap, and every kind of pressure pitfall you can fall into, and asks you a few questions to say, which of these do you fall into the most? If you don't have time to look 15 minutes or so to look at those 40 questions, think about these few. 1, you never receive pushback or different ideas once you shared your idea. That might mean you're in one of those blind power traps. People think you're funnier, smarter, faster than you know you are. You justify all of your actions with a yeah, but. All of these so you can self-diagnose. Yep, that's happened. That's never happened. This always happens. Therefore, it must mean I'm surrounded in my own echo chamber.
Okay, good to know. Well, Sabina, tell me any other top do's and don'ts you want to make sure to mention before we hear about some of your favorite things.
Because pressure corrupts, and it's so important to allow pressure to help you shine, like we sometimes do, when we have that deadline and we're at our most creative. We want pressure to fuel us, not eviscerate us. Our tendency when we get into pressureful situations is to work harder, to hunker down. So my favorite strategy here is to employ what I call blank space, which is actually do nothing. It's 2 hours a week, back to back, that you schedule to unplug. No reading, no online presence, no conversations. You simply sit and think. And if that's too much for you, do it in baby steps. Start with 15 minutes or even 5 minutes or 30 seconds. We are human beings, not human doings, but we're very uncomfortable just being. Those clients who have taken that time to do blank space have had transformational results. They've transformed their companies. They've averted disaster from the competition. They've even changed their careers completely. It's a game changer. It takes the calendar management discipline to actually take that time. And then you can do a variety of different things to make use of that time. You could simply do nothing. You could go for a walk. You could lie in a hammock. These are all things people have done that have worked with me. You could doodle, mind map, draw pictures, whatever, because research shows that our best insights come when we switch off this very busy working part of our brain, right? We're in the shower, we're running, we're commuting. Those are the times where those answers come. So when you're under pressure, thinking I'm such a loser, when am I going to get fired? I got to double down. Stop and do nothing and trust that you already know the answer. All you have to do is let the noise die down so that the signal becomes amplified.
Okay. So then it sounds like there's a variety of things that are acceptable during doing nothing time, but what's not okay is talking to other people or engaging with our digital devices. So
Exactly.
You can walk, you can lie, you can sit, you can have a notebook, and then just roll with it.
Yes, exactly.
Understood. And then in so doing, that's when these brilliant transformational creative ideas just emerge. It's during the do nothing time, or is it after the do nothing time, or is it both?
Both. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you come back. I had somebody who had a near panic attack before his first blank space time. Like, what do you mean? Tell me again. I'm supposed to do nothing at all. How's that going to work? I said, just trust me. Just go do it. He came back. He's like, nothing happened. I said, well, at least your brain was better rested. Guess what? After 3 blank space states, magic started happening. So it might take a while or it might be instantaneous.
Big thanks for Sabina for sharing her wisdom with us. Big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor checkout is EarthBreeze. I recently saw a Netflix documentary that talks about all the plastic that we throw away and we try to recycle, but it doesn't really get recycled. So I've been trying to reduce my plastic, and the most wonderful way that I've been doing so has been skipping those gigantic laundry detergent bottles for EarthBreeze detergent sheets. EarthBreeze detergent comes in super convenient cardboard, plastic-free packaging, so it's much more eco-friendly than your normal detergent. And I love how portable and quick and easy they are, and I save a pretty reasonable amount of time skipping having to carefully pour and measure liquid detergent into the machine by just tossing a quick and easy sheet in there. I personally like their scent-free version, so check out EarthBreeze for an easy way to get clean clothes without the plastic waste and get 40% off with your subscription at earthbreeze.com/awesome. That's earthbreeze.com/awesome. One sponsored checkout is strawberry.me career coaching. Having real clarity and direction can make or break your career. If it seems like you're putting in the work but not seeing your career take off, some coaching might be just the ticket. Strawberry.me matches you with certified career coaches who help you gain clarity on what you really want next in your career, develop a results-driven strategy, and stay accountable. And they can also help you flourish beyond career issues. I had a fantastic session with my coach, Brett, about handling stress from so many responsibilities in so many areas. He was fun. He was wise. He just really got me. We had some laughs and a good time and a good rapport. And he gave me an exercise that has been so quick and so effective for me. I've been doing it every day. So if you're ready to take control and build momentum in your career, go to strawberry.me/awesome to claim your $50 credit. That's strawberry.me/awesome. Because awesome careers don't just happen, you make them happen. Well, now could we hear about a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
My favorite quote is from the author who wrote The Little Prince, and I cannot pronounce his name. And it says something to the effect that perfection is not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing more to take away.
Okay. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
It would be the one I referenced earlier, which is when employees are treated badly, they deliberately sabotage results. Now think about that, Pete. That means they're screwing themselves over just to diss the boss. And this, I read about this in a book by Bob Sutton called The No Asshole Rule.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we had Bob on the show. And a favorite book?
I am not monogamous in favorite books, and so it shifts quite a bit. Currently, my favorite book is Martyr by Akbar Kaveh.
Okay. And a favorite tool? Something you use to be awesome at your job?
I use the Pomodoro technique often, which is setting a timer for 25 minutes and using that as focus time so I'm not monkeying around with every little distraction that comes along.
Okay. And is there a key nugget you shared that really seems to connect and resonate with your clients and audiences? They quote it back to you often.
The one they quote back is actually the shut up more, and sense more as a result. Say less, sense more what is going on because no one else is going to tell you.
Well, do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Take one thing that you're going to do to improve, and you already know what that is. Everybody does. In fact, you have probably a list of a dozen things. Break it down into the smallest, most ridiculously small unit and do it every day as a micro habit. So if you are going to be awesome at your job by being a better listener, once a day, your job would be to paraphrase somebody, or for 5 minutes a day to detach yourself from your phone, leave your phone in another room. If you're going to be awesome at your job through better health and well-being, instead of thinking you're going to go to the gym for 30 minutes a day, do 1 push-up a day. That's what a micro habit is.
All right. Sabina, thank you.
Thank you, Pete.
I love what Sabina has to say about shutting up is so useful and powerful and necessary and yet so difficult. So it actually takes some effort, some exercise to strengthen the shut up muscle. It's good to be aware of that, to be thinking about it and working it, getting all the better at saying nothing and letting other people chime in and letting the goodness of their contributions come forth. Great stuff from Sabina. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1044. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Introducing Instagram Teen Accounts, a new way to keep your teen safer as they grow, like making sure they always have their seatbelt on.
All right, buckle up. Good job.
New Instagram Teen Accounts, automatic protections for who can contact your teen and the content they can see.